Okay, we'll be starting up in a minute, just giving some people a chance to join in. Got a few things to cover today, including the possibility for some kind of tropical system impacting the U.S. next week. We will get into it. So welcome to the Bearded Weatherman. If you're watching live, go ahead and leave a comment. If you're watching later, go ahead and leave a comment. I always like to see where folks are from, so maybe put in there where you're from, where you're watching from tonight or tomorrow. And we'll get started here very shortly. Got a few people on the stream. Go ahead and leave a comment if you're watching. Let me know how you're doing out there, where you're watching from. A lot of folks in Florida that follow this page. Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me okay and all the sound is sounding good. All right. Let's go ahead and get this started here. How's everybody doing out there? I'm the Bearded Weatherman. If you're unfamiliar with my background or this page, I was a forecaster in the Navy. Now I work for an airline watching the weather every day. So, of course, we want to look for impacts from tropical systems there at the airline, obviously. It affects our operation. Got a lot of folks back in Florida, my home state, that are watching. They'll be watching this as well. And I'll be watching it for them too, of course, family back there and friends. In the Navy, again, if you're not familiar, if you're new to this page, in the Navy, we had a area of operations that comprised most of the Atlantic Ocean, and of course that includes the tropics, into Europe, the Mediterranean, some of these areas, the North Atlantic. So, of course, we watched the tropics in the Navy for our ships at sea. That was part of the Maritime Forecast Division in the Navy. So, that's my background. Most of you know it. Probably if you're watching, you know all this information. All right, let's just check in real quick, all right? So, where are we at right now? Let's look at where we're at right now. So, we've got our map up here of the tropical Atlantic. We got a couple of systems right now that are out there. We have Franklin here. We have I think this is Gert, I think it is. I think that's the one. No, that's another system. So currently we just have the one active system, Tropical Storm Franklin, but we will be they're looking at developing another system out here. So very busy out in the tropics right now, as you can see. Here is just a quick map of some of the areas they're watching, and I just want to highlight something that I normally do this time of year. We are into late August now and early September. This is one of my favorite graphs here, showing you when the peak activity, frequency of tropical systems is in the Atlantic. And you can clearly see, and what they did was they studied for a time of year, right? How many storms occurred during that time of year. And you can see this huge spike here right around the end of August, right, into early September. So we're now in that time of year with the most activity in the Atlantic. The Atlantic has been baking and boiling for the entire summer. Water, its specific heat content is very high, so it takes a lot more heating to get it to go. Well, it takes a lot more of the sun's energy to heat it up and get it as warm as it gets on land during the summer. Because of that, we don't see most activity until late summer and even in early fall time frame. So, again, this is why this is happening. This is normal for this time of year to see a lot of activity. The Climate Prediction Center did predict a near normal season with some activity. So they're not. There was a thinking that with El Nino coming into play now, there's usually less activity in the Atlantic. Well, right now, this time of year, we're seeing definitely a lot of activity. And obviously, we saw Hillary impact California recently. So just wanted to point this out. This is the time of year. So if you haven't made the preparations, if you don't have those hurricane supplies, now is the time to go get them, all right? And especially if this storm does organize and form. I mean, there are people watching it, but we're kind of the weather community. We always are watching these things, so people will start to find out if this storm does ultimately form, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. All about what we might see here with scenarios. But again, if you don't have your hurricane supplies, please go and get them. All you got to do is Google search hurricane supplies, hurricane kit, and there's going to be plenty of resources out there. I'm not going to take up too much time tonight with that. I think if you've lived in Florida in the southeast for a while, you kind of know already, but you want to go ahead and start making some preparations. Again, don't know yet if this storm ultimately will be an impact, but this is the time of year when more impacts are felt typically. When there's more activity means there's more chance of a storm impacting the U.S. All right, let's get into it. Check my clock here. All right. So again, we see the Atlantic. This is a big picture. We've got Franklin here spinning. No threat to anybody here in the U.S. And we'll go ahead and show you the latest from the National Hurricane Center. Just to ease your minds, this storm is expected to stay out to sea here. We can go and look at the models real quick and just check on that forecast. Here we go down here. Here's Franklin, right? So let's watch this low here, see where it goes, all right? It's probably going to go this way. That's what the National Hurricane Center is forecasting. So there we go. We're going into the weekend now. Here we've got August 27th, Sunday. This is late night Sunday here, overnight. Continuing to spin off the coast there. We're going to talk about this guy in a second. Don't start panicking yet. Don't start freaking out. We don't know, but we're going to look at that in just a second. And then Franklin stays out to sea. Maybe impacts Newfoundland and Nova Scotia up here in Canada with high winds and seas, but probably at that time no longer a hurricane, no longer a classic tropical system, but a traditional low pressure system. All right, and then let's look at a couple other storms out there real quick before we get into this other storm we're looking at. Here we've got a disturbance out here with 70% chance of formation. We see it. The chances are very high for formation, but again, no threat to land. And another system out here as well that I will show you on the satellite. It's this guy right here. Okay, so let's take a look at what might happen with this storm, and then we'll get into the big news in just one second. All right, so again, we saw kind of already, but there's our storm out here. There's the other storm that's expected to form. So it's staying well out to sea. This one as well staying well out to sea according to the Euro. Okay. Let's look at the GFS American model. See if we can get some agreement. Again, you see Franklin staying well out to sea. See this storm form and stay out to sea as well. Now this is way out to September 8th. So this is a couple of weeks away. So this is, we got to take this with a grain of salt, the end of this forecast. The GFS American does run a longer range forecast for you. Let's see if we got any comments. Oh, see, I got comments. Sorry, I couldn't see them. Marianne wants to discuss Daytona. We will talk in just a second. Jillian is watching in Utah. What a coincidence. She's in Utah. I'm in Utah. No, that's my wife, my lovely wife and producer. I just heard a little chime, so someone sent some stars my way in support of the page. That's Terry. So thank you very much, Terry. Longtime supporter, longtime friend of the page there in Central Florida. So thank you. Bravo Zulu, as we said in the Navy, for that, Terry. Thank you. If you want to support the page, please think or consider sending some stars. I don't do this for any money, really, so it is always appreciated. All right, people are just talking in the comments to each other. That's good. We got a community here at the Bearded Weatherman. Got Joanna, as always, longtime, very faithful follower of the page. And so thank you guys just checking in on the comments there. All right, let's keep going. So what are we seeing here? All right, well, let's look at the model. So again, you see, look at the American. Here's the GFS. Let's keep going. Got a little low pressure down here. Okay, now that's normal. There's little lows that form down in that area. And you see nothing really. So no low forecasted like you see in the Euro for next week. Here's Wednesday of next week. Let's go and compare that to the Euro, which does show a tropical system of it, probably at least Category 1 intensity at this point, according to this model. Now, intensity guidance is very is kind of a crapshoot. It's a mixed bag. Typically, intensity guidance is not as reliable as track forecasting, like you see with these systems out here. That tends to not do well with intensity. But again, here's the Euro. Here's a low forming down here, just south of Yucatan in the Caribbean. Continuing on, here we are this weekend, staying there, spinning around a little bit under the influence of some ridging here, keeping it lower down below it. Ridging or high pressure tends to prevent a storm from moving, as low pressure can't move into high pressure. High pressure always moves to low. That's just physics. There's more stuff in a high, and that low can't go there. So that's why it would continue spinning if this does end up being the case. Then continuing on up into the Gulf by Wednesday evening, or Tuesday evening, pardon me, of next week, and then impacting the Big Bend area on middle of the week next week. Okay, so again, American doesn't show this storm, or if it does, it's not really doing anything with it. Euro has been showing this for a few days. It's kind of waffled around with it. It's wobbled around as far as what it thought of it and any kind of intensification, but it's been consistent the last couple days now on this. So we have to put that in the column of, okay, that's something to consider. The Euro does tend to be a very accurate model. It's classically known across the meteorological community as the most accurate and reliable model. So again, we see for that reason the National Hurricane Center now discussing it. They haven't even mentioned it the last few days, as they were kind of, I think, in a wait and see pattern. They tend to be very cautious at the National Hurricane Center. They know there's a lot of people watching them, and they don't want to cause panic and unnecessary fear in anyone. So they tend to be a little more conservative than I might be, for example. I might mention something they're not ready to mention. So in any case, that's why you come here, right? But they do mention it at a 20% chance, so that's pretty low, all right? And I'll show you kind of what's going on with that. I'm sorry, let's go to the Canadian. This is the Canadian Maritime, or is it Meteorological Center, CMC, I don't know. Anyway, it's a Canadian model. You see that they do also spin up a storm by next week. They do have it impacting southwest Florida here by earlier in the week. So they speed it up and take it in closer to the southwest Florida than what the Euro is showing. Now, so that's two global models, the Canadian and Euro, both seeing the same scenario. Okay, so again, this is why now NHC is ready to discuss this storm. They are seeing consistency in some of the model guidance, the main global models like the Canadian, like the Euro, but they don't see it from the American yet. And so they're not ready to pull the trigger, so to speak, and say, all right, let's go high percentage chance of formation. They're not there yet, but they do want you to look at it. That's why the information is now out there. So again, two different models, not the American, so they're not ready to go higher as far as probability. What kind of scenario might we see? Well, we just showed two, both impacting Florida. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but again, it's something to watch that we'll be watching very closely. Let's go over here and just look at some of the things that might impact the strength of this storm. We've already looked at what the possible track might be, but what might this storm do in the Gulf? Now we all know it's warm out. The Gulf is very warm. Okay, it's hot. We can look at this this analysis here from Tropical Tidbits, great website by the way. Check it out. He puts out great videos. The person running this page, Levi Cohen, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, he is an expert tropical meteorologist and knows his stuff. So if you want to go over there, check out. He's got some YouTubes up. I don't believe he's talking about this storm just yet. No, he's not ready to do that. He's also very cautious on that because again, this may not happen. This scenario, it may not happen. I'm not here saying it will. I'm not putting that kind of probability on it. But if it does move into the Gulf, you see values. This is in Celsius, but 32 degrees Celsius is 89 point something degrees Fahrenheit. So almost 90 degrees, the ocean temperatures, and we all know that is definitely a factor in causing a hurricane to develop and strengthen quite a bit. This area is very hot, and so therefore it would have plenty of warm water to utilize. Now, this isn't actually the metric meteorologists use. Some of you have already seen this before, but they use what's called ocean heat content. You may have seen this on some other weather pages as well. But this is a satellite, polar satellite, orbits the poles right around, goes up here, comes down on the other side, and constantly. So it can get very high resolution images of the Earth, and it takes temperature readings. It takes readings of the top 100 meters or top 300 feet thereabouts of the ocean. Okay, and then it generates ocean heat content map. So ocean heat content is simply the amount of energy available for a tropical system, and you can see it is plotted in kilojoules per centimeters minus squared. So very scientific, but the bottom line is you can see very red areas in here. Okay, and in those areas, or even in these other aqua or whatever shade that is, yellow shade. Forgetting my color palette, but in any case, you can see plenty of energy availability for these systems, and then going in even closer to see this some energy as well. So the ingredients as far as warm ocean temperatures, high ocean heat content, definitely available. Not quite as warm in here closer to Florida, but as you can see, this map's a little incomplete, so we don't get all the readings we would like to. But the bottom line is that this system would have plenty of available energy if it did in fact form. Again, this is not I'm not saying it will. We don't know that yet. We need to wait another day or two to get more consistency in some of these models, and then we could start to say, maybe National Hurricane Center at that point would start to say, okay, the chances are great enough for us to bump up that percentage, and that very well could happen. It happens often. Again, not saying it will in this case. And then let's look at another thing real quick, and then I'm going to sign off because there's only so much we can look at right now as far as this system. All right, let's get over here. We're going to take a look at wind shear. Okay, wind shear is the other factor that plays a part in the development of tropical systems. You need light upper level winds. You need light winds on a tropical because you don't want this system, which is called a barotropic system in meteorology, not that important for our purposes, but if you look at the center of a hurricane, it looks like this, right? Right? The big with an eye in here. Okay? Again, not the best artiste, but what you need is for this column here, this central column, to be relatively free of any disturbance. It needs to be vertical, up and down. Okay, that's called barotropic in meteorology. It's a tropical system. Okay, and it needs to be straight up and down. It can't have anything pushing on it, like winds, right, that would push this over and then prevent rising air in the center. You need this to be free from disturbance so it can draw in that warm, moist air at the surface of the ocean and use it for its energy. Again, ocean heat content, it's energy in that heat. And through convection, right? Rising air, this is a lot of energy that this system can use. But if it's being blown apart by or ripped apart by winds, higher winds in the upper levels or through this whole column, and so that's what we'll see here in this model I'm going to show you. Let's see if I can get it back up. Bear with me. All right. You see these higher wind values, see the reds in here? Get my pin back out. Okay. You see these red values here, 50 knots, so about 55, 60 miles per hour of wind pushing on a system will cause it to it will prevent that sort of activity from developing. It will prevent, do I have my, okay, yeah, I'm just seeing a lag here. And I'll talk about this a little bit more. Just some comments. All right. Okay, anyway, I'm sorry. So, but you need this to be light, these winds up here. And you see over here, you have a lot of wind shear right now in the Caribbean. Now, let's go forward in time. And you see light wind shear. You see these values here? See this down here? Or white even, that means no wind shear. That's what is forecasted by the American model for this weekend in this area. Okay, so then that would mean light upper level winds and the possibility for some type of formation. Again, the American doesn't show formation yet, but it does forecast lighter winds. So let's actually go to the Euro, which is the one that's giving us this forecast. And you can see light winds there. Keep going through the weekend. There's the low that spins up. Okay, that's our system we'll be watching, low pressure system. Go forward in time. You do see a lot of wind shear here in the Gulf, right? See these red shades, lots of wind shear. Bad for a storm, but it's down below there, okay? But definitely would be getting sheared somewhat at this point if this model's accurate. Going into the weekend. And then goes, and you see there's still a lot of wind shear on this system through the middle of the week. See that? Lot of wind shear, lots of winds flowing over it. Not as much over here, so this would give it a chance to develop somewhat over here if it moves that direction, okay? So it'll really come down to where is that wind shear going to be, if that wind shear is going to be present, and where it would be to determine the strength. When we go forward, lots of shear over this system for most of the time in the Gulf, if this is accurate, okay? Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means that if the system is sheared quite a bit, that it wouldn't strengthen much past maybe a Cat 1 hurricane. Again, that's a big what if because we don't even know if this storm's going to form yet, okay? But the Euro is forecasting some wind shear to be present in the Gulf that would have an impact on the strength of the system if it indeed does form. That's the forecast now, okay? A lot of different things could happen. The system can move more like the Canadian, like here, right? Well, if that's the case, it won't have as much wind shear and therefore would be stronger. I hesitate to use the storm as an example, but an analog could be an Ian. You saw the possible track that again, I'm not saying this will happen. Please do not take it that way, all right? But if it does, and comes in closer to shore, like Ian, it could hold some of that strength that it developed with all this very warm air down here and high ocean heat content with very warm sea surface temperatures. Ocean temperatures are very warm there. So again, if it moves over here, then it would be less shear. It's under this ridge, as you see. Ridges are mean light upper level winds typically. You see the ridge. Here's a trough over here. That's lots of wind. See that trough? Troughs have a lot of wind in the upper levels. Ridges have very little. So if it did move over here, then that would be a bad scenario for Southwest Florida. Again, if it takes that Canadian track that we looked at earlier. So a lot of question marks, a lot of what ifs. We're not panicking. Our slogan here is don't panic, right? But we are going to continue to watch this storm very closely, especially over the next day or so. We're going to wait and see, okay, is that American model going to pick up on this storm? The latest run is in now. There'll be another run, the 0Z run, here in the next few hours. And we'll wait to see, okay, is the American starting to pick up? Let's go forward. You do see that they spin up a low a little bit. See that low that was there for next week? But they don't really do anything with it. It looks like maybe it comes over here, they're saying. Gets caught up in something, maybe this right here. And then just gets absorbed into the long wave trough here. No no formation at all. So again, the American model has not picked up on this storm yet, and so therefore the National Hurricane Center will keep this at a 20% chance of formation for now. That's what my feeling is as to why it's staying kind of low, even though the Euro's got the, and the Canadian are picking up on it. Sometimes I look at this icon. There's another model that's picking up on it. So that's the main global, the icon model. It's picking up on it. Here it is for Monday. So we've got a number of models agreeing on this system being something to deal with. None of them have really put much intensity on them yet. The Euro definitely the most aggressive. This is the 18Z. Yeah, this doesn't go out far enough. There it is. 980 something millibars. That's a low end, 983. That's a low end category 1. Maybe even category 2. It's got it down to 981 here. 977. So that would be category 2 maybe. Even possibly 3 at that with that kind of millibar range. So again, the lower the number, the stronger the storm. The Euro, very aggressive, but usually pretty reliable. So, you know, I'm not I'm not speaking for the National Hurricane Center. Again, we don't know if this will happen. I'm not saying it will happen, but my instinct and my spidey senses are starting to tingle on this one, guys. So keep an eye on it. Don't panic. Be ready. But definitely prepare for the possibility of some type of system impacting the southeast, whether it's Florida, somewhere else, next week, middle of next week. My spidey senses are tingling, and I'm not going to do a video unless I have some kind of instinct on it. Again, it may not happen at all. We hope that's the case. But with these couple models now agreeing, I would suspect that percentage is going to increase tomorrow and the next day. That as the models come in and maybe the American starts to pick up on it. I posted about the storm a few days ago. It's kind of waffled back and forth, so I didn't want to continue to talk about it as much. I know you guys wanted me to, but I just wasn't ready to. But now I'm ready to start talking about this. And this is the time of year. The ingredients are in place. This is a bad place for one of these storms to form. It's an area where it definitely becomes a threat to the United States, to the southeast, to Florida, when we see this. Okay, and let's see if we can get some historical tracks here. Just bear with me. I'm just kind of freestyling right now. You have some historical tracks, I wonder? I know they were on here somewhere. Okay, they're down probably further. Yeah, okay. I guess I could show you this one. There's likely, you know, tracks forming in here, going up into these areas, so as you can see, right? Or even over here. So, it is a place that's concerning if it forms and takes the kind of track. It would be sort of a prevailing or a likely track, as you can see over here, for that area is in those directions towards Florida, towards the southeast. But again, we don't know yet. But all right, I'm not going to waffle anymore on this. I've said my piece. I said my opinion. I'm not saying it will form, but I have a feeling on this one, and it will be one I'm really going to watch closely. Okay, that's it for tonight.